Okay, so it looks like we've got most people joining us, and I want to be mindful of time because for anyone who's joined us on a previous webinar, you know that we've gone a little over. So I'm going to go ahead and get started, and we may have some more people join us in a little bit. So first of all, I want to welcome everyone to the New England Hemophilia's Webinar Wednesday series. My name is Sarah Shinkman, and I am NEHA's new program director. Well, it's not as new anymore. I started about 2 months ago. And in the midst of a global pandemic, sometimes that feels like years. So I'll be tonight's moderator, and really thrilled to be here with you all this evening. As we navigate the current health crisis, certainly our primary concern is the health and wellness of individuals within our community and the folks that we serve. Being connected with each other is more important than ever. And while we may be practicing physical distancing, staying healthy means not falling into unhealthy practices, including a pattern of social isolation. Our goal is to keep you informed as much as possible, and which is why we launched this weekly webinar series. And this is the 7th one that we've done so far. For the foreseeable future, NEHA will continue hosting this educational forum at 7 p.m. Each Wednesday. Tonight's webinar is all about stress management and maintaining your mental health in uncertain times. Our speaker, Debbie DeLariva, will help us understand what happens to our brain when we are stressed and give us tools to manage adversity. I know Debbie's going to give a little bit more of an introduction later, so we'll look forward to that. NEHA would like to thank HFA, the Hemophilia Federation of America, for their support of tonight's webinar. For those of you who don't know, NEHA is a member organization of HFA, and we partner on many initiatives, including educational programs and webinars. Before we get started, I just want to go over some helpful hints that will guide us through the webinar tonight. First of all, our webinar will last approximately 1 hour. For those who have joined us in the future, you'll see we're using a new platform. Typically we use GoToWebinar, but to offer a little bit more of an interactive experience, we've decided to transition to Zoom for this one. I'm sure many of you have spent hours on Zoom over the last 2 months, but for anyone who may be new, I wanted to just go over some reminders and things that might help you use the system even better. So first, I would like to share that tonight's webinar is being recorded. We're doing that in order to be able to share with the community afterward. So please note that if you do not want to be included in the recording, you can turn off your camera and you do not need to share as that comes up. We do have the option to include notes and chat if you prefer to keep anything private. Again, you can turn on and off your camera at your discretion. The box to be able to do that is in the lower left of your screen. And if you'd like to turn it on and add a virtual background, as you can see, I've got one going, you can do so by clicking the arrow button next to the camera and select an image. As a reminder, throughout most of the webinar, you will be muted just to help make sure that we don't have too much background noise, but we will pause for some interaction during the presentation. Your participation is certainly encouraged, so feel free to do so by unmuting yourself when I make the announcement, or you can add in any sort of response into the chat. We've also been using a polling service, Swift Polling, to help gauge some participation as we go along. Please, for that, you'll need to grab your cell phone to be able to enter some responses into a number that will give you to text. You can also adjust your view. So I know for some of us, we prefer to just see our speaker as we go along. Other people prefer to see the names and the photos of people who are on the chat. So you've got both the option of gallery view as well as speaker view. And finally, you are welcome to share some nonverbal feedback. On the lower right of your screen, there should be an option for a hand clap as well as a thumbs up, which is kind of a fun way to interact if you prefer to do it that way. Tech issues are not uncommon. I know they happen to the best of us between multiple users at home, broadband strength, and so on. So if something comes up, feel free to log out, log back in. You can also go ahead and sometimes just go to phone, which is another good option if you can't participate in the camera feature. So with that being said, I want to go ahead and turn it over to Debbie, our speaker for tonight. I'll just, one final note, if you do have questions for Debbie during the presentation, feel free to add them into the chat, the chat box, and we'll go ahead and announce those at the end of the webinar. I'll be sure to share those, and you can send them to me privately if you prefer, or you can send them to the group. So Debbie, let me turn it over to you to begin the presentation. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. It's been such a pleasure working with Sarah to get this together. A lot of people don't realize about how many hours it takes to get it all arranged. So what a beautiful person, lovely person to work with. I've been excited about this all day long. A lot of different reasons. First being is that I absolutely love Neha. I have a special place in my heart for that chapter, and you're a very strong one, and you have wonderful leadership. The other part of it is that I've just been excited about talking to people, even though it seems as if I'm talking to my computer. So this is my way of feeling connected to my family. And you can see by the picture, the bleeding disorder community is my second family. That's my son on the left. He was born in 1994 with severe hemophilia. There's my husband, Jorge, who's the past chair of board of directors at NHF. And there's my daughter, Christina. Unaffected in the genetic sense, but of course not in the sense, because we know living with bleeding disorder affects all of us. You know, I asked my son, so, you know, what are some words I can tell everyone in the community? What's it been like to live with hemophilia? And in a 25-year-old young adult male, ups and downs, pretty much all I got. His journey has had a lot of ups and downs. When he prophy wasn't even the gold standard at that time. He was part of a study that proved insurance companies prophy was the way to go with hemophilia. So we've been in this a long time, over 25 years now. Next slide, please. I'll do that. Sorry, it takes a second. Gosh, my history is this. It's a pre-hemophilia and post. Long time ago, I worked in a psychiatric hospital as a stress management therapist. And then I had a 10-year stint where I got to be the Zello in Texas. I was a Lone Star chapter executive director. After that, I basically formed a company called Mental Health Matters Too. I've always been very involved in the community. I mean, just consistently so. But I wanted to incorporate another piece. I really felt as if we didn't have enough about how mental health is affecting us really feels like to live with a bleeding disorder. So I formed a company, and I'll tell you more about it in just a moment. Go back to the last slide, please. I'm gonna let you do it, Sarah. So I think at this point, we were gonna take a small survey, and I'm gonna let Sarah lead us through it, and let's just kind of check in and see how we're doing before we get started.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me go ahead and pull that out. While I'm pulling up the screen, if you don't already have your cell phone out, please grab that now. And you should see on the screen, there's a question that will come up. It's got a phone number. So text 781-412-7971 and respond to the question, what was your level of stress before the pandemic? So type 1 for at the lowest level of stress and 7 for the highest level of stress. And Debbie has some data that she's going to share with us in conjunction with this question. Great, thanks for responding. Looks like 5 so far, 4 and 5 are kind of peaking here at 33%. Great.
Yeah, so yeah,
respondents, yep.
Definitely. So I want to be quoting some research from a 2019 study. It's by Verywell Mind. Basically, they came out with a report called the United States of Stress. They interviewed 6,700, and so this is 2019. This is, of course, before the pandemic. And so what we found is that about 12% of people were a 7 or above at that time. Most people are on the 5 to 6 range, so 34% of people. And what you're talking about 17%, that was the national average before the pandemic. So about 5 is generally where Americans were at. And we'll go to the next one and see how we fare with the rest of Americans.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting that we're right at the same level here based on the responses we. Okay, let me move to the next slide. Next question should come up in just a second. Oops. Sometimes this is a little finicky. Okay, so this next question you can respond to. Oh, sorry about that. Keeps going back and forth on me. Here we go. How likely are you to put others' needs in front of yours when you are stressed? So for this one, please respond by saying not likely at all, somewhat likely, very likely. So you can text the corresponding number to that. Okay, I see. Looks like so far the majority are saying very likely, and followed by somewhat likely.
So it looks like we're almost finished with the participants.
Yeah.
And this is exactly it. What happens is females are 70% likely to put others' needs before them. And men they're around us, they're about 50%. And so I'm not sure the demographics of people on the phone, but I can tell you that pretty much fits with everyone. And that's why I wanted to do this webinar, because that's exactly what happens is when we're in some type of crisis, that's exactly what we do. We stop thinking about ourselves, start thinking about others, and it's no doubt, and no wonder that in a couple of weeks, people are feeling very, very empty in terms of taking care of themselves. So next one, please.
Oh, sorry about that, Debbie. I was just on mute for a second there. Looks like one of my questions got a little bit mixed up here. So let's start this next poll, which is before the pandemic, what were you most stressed out about? Text 1 for job, 2 financial issues, 3 health concerns, 4 relationship issues, and 5 for other. And it looks like so far health concerns seems to be what most people are responding, in addition to job and other. Interesting information here.
Really reflect our community.
Yes, absolutely.
Health concerns, and it could be a number of things, but it's really interesting. The national average talks about people are most concerned about their financial issues, and then about all the stress that comes along with their jobs. And then we talk about the future and relationship issues. So very, very interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. I know I'm interested that no one hit financial issues there. So, but as you said, reflective of our community, certainly that health concerns is the top one here. Okay, so that's it for the live polling. I just want to share that this is anonymous data. We don't do anything with this other than to use this as an engagement tool. So we really appreciate people's willingness to share feedback here and to help engage. Since of course we can't be together, and if we can't see everyone, this is a good way to at least get a sense for where our audience is, in the same way that we would if we were in a live presentation. So I'm going to go ahead and just pause the share for a minute and bring us back to our webinar. Okay, so we should be all set. And Debbie, you should be able to control the screen from here.
Sounds great. So this is what keeps me up at night, because I've done a lot of research about mental health and bleeding disorders. I haven't done the research myself. I've read it and really saw the trends. And what we know by common sense, having a chronic condition leads to more stress, That's something we know. In fact, there's one stat that says it's 6 times more likely for someone who's struggling with a physical condition to at one point in their time to develop a mental illness. So, and then once we became in the pandemic, I heard a researcher say that this pandemic has all the characteristics of a that creates the most fear. It's something that's not, it's beyond our control, it's unpredictable, and we're not sure how it lasts. When you put those factors with life with a bleeding disorder, our needs are to have our factor, to have our doctors, to have each other, to have that sense of connection and belonging. So when you put these two things together, this is for challenging emotions. And the way that I hope that I can convince people around the country to understand about mental illness. What is mental illness? It's nothing less than your ability to cope is not as strong as the stressors in your life at that moment. There's nothing to be ashamed of. There shouldn't be a stigma about it. It just means things are unbalanced. So what I wanted to do is put together a webinar that can explain how our mind is working when it's completely stressed out. I'm trying to get to the next slide. Just be a moment. So this is it. What I want to do in this very, very short period of time is to give you Brain 101, just really trying to help you understand what's happening in our brain when we're stressed, but how we can use that knowledge to hack the system, how we can use our knowledge to actually use what's happening to our brain to our advantage. And what I'm hoping is at the end of all of this, you will either have an additional tool to put into your toolbox or your backpack on how to deal with this pandemic, or I have created a sense of urgency for you to really hone in on self-care, because we need the pandemic where it's at. We need to have that sense of intentionality about taking care of ourselves so we can be in this pandemic for the duration and it does not hurting our mental health at a significant level. I continue to try to work this here. Alrighty, so there's a couple of things. We gotta look at brain facts, right? These are some really great secrets that our brains have kept all of these years, and it's really important for us to know about them. Number one is your brain can't seem, am I doing the control U? Here, I wanna go back to that. Our brains can't seem to distinguish what is real and what is imagined, meaning that our brain becomes just as stressed when we're imagining a stressful situation as to when we're in the situation itself. For example, this is maybe the real scenario of the primary breadwinner in your family. They're good, they're ready to go, they're feeling healthy. But if we think about what could happen if the person that's in charge of our health insurance, and for the money that we need to buy food, if we stay in that sense of anticipatory stress, imagining them in the hospital bed, fighting COVID, our brain is going to be having that stressful response just as much as if it's actually happened. That's what I'm trying to get through with this particular slide. Brain fact number 2 is coming up. There's a big lull. Sarah, I'm just gonna let you do it, okay? So here's the other thing that a lot of people, everybody understands how our brain has this fight or flight response when we're in some type of physical danger. But what we don't really realize is that we have that same response to emotional distress. When somebody's unhappy with us, when somebody expects something from us that we're not willing to give to them, are not able to give to them, being screamed at gives you the same charge in your body, just like if somebody were chasing you, you get the same physiological responses, meaning that your heart would rate when your heart races when someone's screaming at you. You can't breathe as well. You can't think properly. And it just puts us in a stress mode, just like when we're in physical danger. Next slide. Brain fact number 3 is this one. when we're stressed, we go into this survival mode. We go into the state of readiness, readiness to meet the challenges that we're faced in our life, that our life is presenting for itself. So I'm just going to read over the symptoms, and then your mind kind of mentally check out how many of those you're experiencing, be it insomnia, hypervigilant, restlessness, being irritable, just really hard to be around, a loss of interest in things that used to make you happy or peaceful, and that actual feeling of depression. Some people don't feel depressed, they just feel emotionally numb, and body pains and headaches. If you're experiencing many of these, or more than 4 of these, you could definitely be in a state of high stress and anxious mode. And as you know, we just cannot relax when we're in the state of mind. The next one. Brain fact number 4 is going to tell you that, when we become stressed, when we're facing some kind of crisis in our life, it's not that we're with that crisis, but our brain actually goes back and scans for periods of time when you felt you were in the same scenario. It's looking for how you dealt with this in the past. Unfortunately, what's happening is when you have this kind of scan going on in your brain, it also brings back memories of how you felt when you were in a similar crisis situation. So the past comes back for a visit. You're not only dealing with the present problems, but you're also dealing with memories of the past. And it's, there's a term for it in this field. It's called compound stress. I'll give an example of this. Right in the very beginning of the pandemic, I was wondering how my son was going to make it from Dallas to Houston, where there's going to be gasoline or what have you. My son that has severe hemophilia. And I hadn't thought about this memory in a long time, but all of a sudden I was back into my mind in a moment when I was in the front yard after he had hit his head as a toddler, and I was waiting for the nurse to come infuse him. And I had all the same physiological responses that I had back then, that sense of panic. And so that's what I mean when I say that when we're already in crisis, our brain scans to see how we've dealt with this in the past, and it brings back memories. The solution to all of this is a lot of awareness about what is happening in the present moment and a lot of inner comfort. And that's what we're going to turn to in just a moment. But first, we need to learn a few more things about the brain. Next. You're going to see a picture of the brain come up, and it seems completely complicated, more complicated than it should be. I'm just going to be talking about different parts. I'd like to bring your attention to the part of your brain that's called the amygdala and the part of your brain that's called the hypothalamus. Very quickly, this is the stress response. Your amygdala picks up all kinds of stimulus, what you're seeing and hearing, someone touching your skin, memories that you're having. The amygdala likes to rely on safety, so it considers everything a danger. It sends the information to the hypothalamus, who then processes it and sends the information to your body to get ready to be in fight and flight. That's when, again, your heart is going, your breathing rate is going, your muscles are tight, and you're having a hard time focusing or concentrating. All of that happens in a fraction of a second. It's as if somebody were to come up behind Sarah right now and tap her on the shoulder and scare her to death. This response happens before we're pretty much even aware of what's going on. The second part of the stress response is the part that I really want to tell you about, because that's where we have control. After that split second of someone touched her on the shoulder, what's going on, only after that moment does more information go to the prefrontal cortex. You can see it at the front of the brain. That's that part of the brain that's going to make a decision about whether we need to stay in fight or flight response, or whether we can start shutting things down and decrease the amount of anxiety that we have in our body. It's in that second part of the stress that we have control, even though we don't feel it at the time. But the more that we know about our brain, the more control we can exercise over it. Next, please. So what we're going to do with this, basically, is just hack this stress system. We're going to figure out how we can fool our brain into knowing that we're okay, we're not in immediate danger, and that to get the cortisol and to get all the different adrenaline systems to relax, to slow down. If you've seen, I think I've seen everything written on how to deal with your mental health during the pandemic. They all say the same thing. Focus on what you can control. At first, I laughed that off, but you know what? That makes perfect sense. We're going to talk about those in a moment. But then what I want to do in the second part of this is teach you how to trick your mind physiologically and psychologically on how to let it know that you're safe, and we can go back to life as normal. Next, please. Well, we gotta trick our mind. Our mind is watching what's going on over with the rest of our life. And yes, how often you shower and what outfit you decide to wear in the morning. I know that sounds silly, but those are choices that we can make. Whether we take a shower or not, what we put on, what we eat and drink. We know that we want the comfort mac and cheese and the glass of wine. We know that, but it's through choosing foods that can help soothe us, like green tea. Those are choices that we're making. Safety behavior in your home and when you leave. Again, that is in your control. Could you go back, please? How many times you wipe the doorknobs, or whether you let your kids go out to play. Keeping your house stocked with food and supplies. Again, these are very small things that we can do. But the most important one of this entire slide is to make the decision whether or not to take time for yourself. Remember, we talked about in the very beginning that it's our natural instinct to take care of others. Well, this next slide, I'd like to invite you just to ask yourself this question. When is the last time in this, I think it's 8 weeks now of shelter in place, when's the last time you intentionally created a sense of joy or inner peace for yourself? And feel free to, if you'd like to share it with us in the chat, that would be great.
Yeah, please feel free to share now. And I can also, if for anyone who's interested, I can go ahead and unmute the lines if you want to reach out to me privately and let me know. I'll share, one thing that I know we've been doing is finding at least one time during the week where my husband and I can just kind of be kind of at peace. And we put our son, who you can probably hear sometimes in the background, to bed, and have a special meal that we order from takeout from a local business. And I think that, knowing that we've got that to look forward to every week has really made a big difference. And in our peace, and knowing that kind of we have something to look forward to, and it's also a routine.
Mm-hmm. And Viva said she went to the yard and
I just saw something. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
No, that's wonderful, and it is about being intentional, because that's the only way to cope right now. Mother Universe herself is not going to be the one to send us a sense of peace. We have to create it for ourselves.
Just someone sent me a private message, and I love this. She says, in the words of Dale Cooper, every day, once a day, give yourself a present. I think that's a special one. I know one thing that we've been doing is that little practices. You mentioned green tea earlier. We have chocolate tea that we love from New Mexico. And we make that around 4 o'clock every day. And it's amazing how a cup of tea really lifts you up in a moment where you just need a little extra something.
Definitely so. And hopefully this light just reminds people the importance of that. Yeah. Would you mind going to the next one?
Absolutely. Debbie, I should apologize. Sometimes my screen is really sensitive and advances slides without me knowing. So apologies to anyone if you see a little disruption. Oh, I just have to share, I don't know if you see, there's another response that came in I think is so great. I sent a card to someone, had a good phone call with a friend over the weekend. It's good to connect with others. I think that's a really nice.
Absolutely so. It's funny, when I talk about meditation, even the gentlemen that have hemophilia will say, oh yes, I meditate all the time. This is so important to me. Really, the truth is, on average, it's about less than 10% of Americans that are meditating on a And I really wonder about that, because remember, what we're trying to do is trick our brain into figuring out that we are actually safe and not in harm. Well, what meditation does, I think people make it more complicated than it should be. It's just simply two things involved. You're slowing your breathing rate down. That gives a message to your brain that things are okay for the moment. And then the second thing is you're just simply being intentional with your focus. All of us have meditated when we've sat on the shore of a beach and just watched the waves and listened to the sounds and felt the wind on our faces. That is simply what meditation is. A lot of people have difficulty with this because we are in a get her done mentality all the time. The faster we go, the better. Or many times people have traumas in their minds, or they have just various issues that the moment that they begin to try to calm down, those thoughts decide to have a party. And so when I'm teaching meditation, what I'm trying to do is teach people the breathing part of it, which is actually simply just breathing in through your nose and breathing out through your mouth. But I also want to make sure that I'm giving them different versions, because people simply need to have something to do with their brains. And so there's a technique called progressive relaxation, where you just tell your family you're taking 10 and you don't expect to be interrupted, and you listen to nice music, and you begin to tense up different parts of your body, starting from your head usually, them and feeling what that's like, and then continue to progress down down your body. That was effective, and so is visual. I'd like just for you to think about, when was the last time or the last place you were at where you just felt completely comfortable in your own skin, you felt confident, that you felt that you're just feeling really good about yourself and your life situation. Well, many times, whatever that is for you, you can go there at any, and it actually does bring you back. And it gives you this confidence that you have some degree of your mind aware. The last one's called 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I think a lot of people have learned this one, but I'm going to put on a little music and go through what that is. I actually did this meditation walking through the busy streets of New York, and I had never felt so relaxed in my life, believe it or not. And what it is taking a couple of minutes and looking around you and noticing 5 different colors. And then the next step is to think about 4 different sounds that you hear, and 3 different touches, maybe the touch of the chair you're on, or maybe the table that you're at. And then you become aware of 2 different smells. It could be pleasant or not. And then number 1 is you finish this by doing 1 affirmation, by telling yourself whatever it is brings you comfort. For me, my number 1 is, I am enough. If you got any degree of relaxation with that, I'd be super surprised, because that's something you can really do over a couple of moments, and it's also on your time, and you do it the way you want to do it. But I just wanted an example of it. Next, please. Physiologically, we've got a tool number 2 to control our brain and get some kind of emotional regularity. And here it is, exercise. How many times have you heard this, right? I just want to explain exercise in a different way. I learned about this a long time ago, that our emotions are just that. Emotions are energy. And we need to find some way of distributing this energy so it doesn't build up and take control over us. And that's what exercise does for us. It also lowers your threshold so things don't stack up so much. And if they do stack up, it gives a place for the energy to go. But here's the thing about exercise and what I've learned about habits in general. It needs to be super convenient. It needs to be something you can get to quite easily. But in order for any habit to stick, there's no rule like to do 21 days and the habit sticks. There really is nothing like that. A habit sticks when it develops a sense of well-being, when you've been able to actually feel good while you're doing it or after you've done it. And that's really important because a lot of people forget that. They might quit before it happens. There's also the 1% rule. A lot of people say, oh my gosh, it's just too much. I'll never get to a point where it's actually doing anything for me. The 1% rule is this. When you're exercising, if you could just do 1% more than you did the day before, think about how far you'll be in a week or a month or a year. In the book Atomic Habits, he describes this as let's say you're taking a plane from Boston and you're trying to go to LA. Well, if the pilot just adjusts his routing mechanism 1%, you're not going to end up, during the flight, you're not going to end up in LA. You're going to end up somewhere probably in Baja California. That 1% rule can make a huge change, and it builds on itself too. Last thing about exercise is you just told yourself you matter, you're important, you have value, and you're willing to put the time into yourself. So there's my thing about exercise. Next, please. We also need to trick our minds psychologically. And yes, that's exactly what we can do. This whole next slide is about having self-compassion. And I think it's especially important right now because when we're in crisis, many times our old habits of thinking creep up very slowly, and people's inner critic just again starts having a party, starts taking over. Your inner critic might let you know that this is too much for you, you can't handle this, or that you just don't have what it takes. Oh, would you please go back? Self-compassion is simply about listening to yourself without judgment. Maybe you had a chapter event that has been canceled and you're really bummed about it. But if you were to say that to somebody and they say something to the extent of, how could you worry about that? I mean, that's so selfish. Look what's going on. People are dying. That's an example of not being compassionate. That really means something to you. And just listening to that by validating your feelings and your thoughts about it, by letting yourself know that is important. And it's okay to have these feelings of resentment or anger right now. The other thing is self-compassion people provide themselves comfort and reassurance. And all of this involves really just being in touch with how you really think about things and being that person to really listen without opinions, or telling you how you should feel. Another thing people that do that are really good at self-compassion is that when these thoughts come up about what you think about yourself or what somebody else has told you in your life before about yourself, when you're experiencing self-compassion, you actually challenge those thoughts, those tapes in your head that you've learned throughout the years. For example, I was always told growing up that I think too much. And it always felt just felt really bad to hear this over and over again. And later I've been able to challenge that. Yeah, I do think too much. And I think it's okay because I really like my thought process. I mean, it's just a way of validating whatever experience you have instead of buying into the insults people have given to you throughout the years. Next one, please. Self-compassion is this. What would a best friend say to you about how you're dealing with the pandemic? Or what would you say to a best friend about how they're dealing with everything? Would you tell them what they should be doing, could be doing? Would you tell them that their fears are just the charts and they need to get a handle? Or you would just say, I feel like you're doing the best you can, and we're going to be okay. That's an example of being compassionate with yourself. Alrighty, next slide, please. We talked about how we can trick our mind into becoming more relaxed and working in our favor by compassion. Another part of it is recognizing stressful thoughts. Whether we realize it or not, there's so many things that we do inside of our own brains because we have about 70,000 thoughts a day, and many of these are stressful and self-deprecating. And what I want to talk about 4 of them, bring them up to your attention, so maybe next time they do pop up into your brain, you have a chance to question them and to see if it's really real. Catastrophizing. Wow, we're all doing that right now in our brains. What if this goes on for a year? What if my kids get COVID-19? Part of that is in reality, very much so. So you can be protective and do the right things to protect yourself. But when we go off into what ifs forever, what we're doing is we're just staying in a state of anxiety. And we're not experiencing present for what it is right now. When we catastrophize for a very long time, I'd like to bring up the image for you of you standing next to an IV drip, and inside the little bag is just adrenaline and cortisol and all those anxiety chemicals. Catastrophizing makes you catastrophizing is what's actually stirring all of that and keeping the drip going. Another thing that we do to ourselves, and think about this about during this pandemic, have you should yourself or somebody else? Shoulds are the rules about how we should be, how I should be acting, how I should be protecting my family. When you're shooting yourself, what you're doing really is your inner critic is having a party and letting you know that you're not measuring up because you should be this way or that way. And we know where that leads to. It just leads to a lot of shame and guilt. But how about those rules about how other people should be behaving? I'm finding this every single day in quarantine with my family. I think they should be able to put the trash liner in the trash can properly so the trash doesn't go down. When I have those shoulds about other people, what I'm doing is staying in a state of blaming others. And I feel resentful, and I feel many times taken advantage of. Next one, please. This next one has to do with recognizing another very common stressful thought that we have, and especially right now in pandemic, is called fallacies of control, meaning that when you're stuck in the stressful thought pattern, you really believe that your emotions are being controlled by somebody else. I would be happier if people would just simply treat me kinder. Or I can't be happy in this COVID situation, stuck with these people. The feeling that comes up for that when you stay in this external state is that you feel helpless. And turning that around would be that this is really difficult right now. I'm having a hard time dealing with this, and I know I'm going to be okay. I am responsible for my happiness. Another control fallacy is that we have this capacity, this magical capacity to control other people's emotions, meaning that we need to be able to make sure everybody's happy and peaceful, and that we actually have the ability to change someone's frame of mind. Well, the results of this emotion is just feeling burdened, emotionally drained, and perpetually frustrated because we really don't have the ability to control whether someone's happy with us or happy with themselves. The last stressful thought that could be taking over right now is mental filters. And that is when you magnify all the negative stuff about yourself, but you forget to acknowledge the positive things. Presentation, I could be beating myself up about because I wasn't able to switch the slides. And then not even acknowledge about the fact that maybe somebody might have gotten something out of this presentation. That's my hope anyway. But that way I can own a win and I don't stay down on myself. So these are just 4 different ways of stressful thoughts and how they can wreak havoc in our lives. The next one, please. I'm saying a lot of words, and I'm trying to paint a picture here. During this time and for the months to come, I'm really talking about ways that you can determine whether you want to act like and feel like a thermometer versus a thermostat. When we took the temperature of our kids when they were little, um, a thermometer is subject to whatever is going on around them. You're going to feel whatever the outside is telling you that you should be feeling, or whatever the outside temperature is. You're externally focused, and that is what's affecting how you feel. A thermostat, people, they set it to 72. They make that decision every day when they wake up that I am going to be my best self. I'm going to do my darndest to make sure no one takes away my peace and happiness, no matter what happens. Um, Later, if you want to work with the slide, because they're going to keep it up, you could go back to it and just think about all the ways that you might be behaving as a thermometer and how you can convert that to a thermostat. It's just a concept. I hope it helps somebody. The next one, please. I'm going to end it with just a couple of more slides. Number one, I need to say that I'm always proud of my community, the bleeding disorder community. And I've seen so many people step up to help us cope and help us feel connected. You have people like Tim Ringo, who is playing us music every day, or Rick Starks. He's a gentleman that is teaching us how to do Tai Chi. So in NHF and HFA, I think they're doing a fabulous job of letting us know about mental health resources at this time. And at the same time, there's always an app for something, or a website. There's actually a virusanxiety.com website that has a plethora of resources to help you in order to cope with the anxiety associated with the virus. I also always want to make sure people know about the suicide prevention hotline, 800-273-TALK. And I want to let you know, too, that hotline is not just for people who are feeling like ending their life. It is a place to go to talk to someone where you can be real. You can let them know you're going through a hard time, and talk to someone who knows how to talk to somebody that's just not themselves at the moment and want to get help. If you're not a big talker, crisis text line is always there for everyone. And I want to make sure that people know, especially for young adults, the JED Foundation, that is a whole organization dedicated just to increasing awareness of mental health with adolescents and young adults, and also preventing suicide by all different programs. There's really something for everyone that's going through a difficult time. Next, please. So, mental health resources. So many times we would love to get help, but we don't know where to go, or maybe we don't have the resources at the moment to pay for different counseling options. I want to let you know that going to see someone, talking to a shrink, or whatever are those words to you that mean going to see someone to talk about mental health issues, is not always necessary. Many times we can get workbooks that teach us about these concepts, and we can actually go through, just like you would a workshop on anything else, and hear about these concepts of self-compassion and stress management, and work at our own pace. Don't Feed the Monkey Mind is an amazing one, and so is the workbook on self-compassion. I want to point out an app called Not Okay, and I'm spreading the word through the whole Bleeding Disorder Conference. Not Okay is actually one app. It costs $2.99 a month. And what you do is you preload this message that says something like, you know what, I'm not doing so good today. I could use a call from my friends. You preload it to 5 individuals that you trust, are a sense of support. You push one button, that message goes to them, and they know to call you or to reach out to you in a certain way. It also has a pin locator. So if you're not responding, people can find you. The Calm app, that's how I go to sleep every single night. And it's a great way to wind down and help yourself go through your day, relax, and give your body a break from the anxiety. And of course, Talkspace and BetterHelp. Online counseling has been proven to be extremely efficient and helpful, and it's really what a lot of people need right now. And next one, please. I think the next slide is just how to get in touch with me. Like I said, I formed Mental Health Matters in 2018. I formed this company in response to a really difficult situation in our community. One community member that a lot of people know about, his name was Barry Hardy. Barry Hardy is a gentleman that rode across America several times to raise money for Save One Life, the international hemophilia relief organization. Barry Hardy also struggled with depression and anxiety. And on February 17th, 2018, Barry died by suicide. And I formed this company because I knew if Barry was in so much anguish, if Barry was at that point of depression, and he was so well known and well liked and well respected, that there must be other people in our community. So I formed Mental Health Matters too, and I developed a resource guide to help all of us find resources for care. And then I also tacked on a research button, which tells you about recent research about the psychosocial nature of living with a bleeding disorder. So that's what I did, and webinars like this one that came out of the company. So that's pretty much what I wanted to say. A lot of words. Just to summarize, we talked about how stress affects us, how we can hack the system by tricking our mind into relaxing. We can do that through exercise and all the endorphins that come with that, and also by meditating and by becoming our best friends, talking to us in a way that we would talk to a best friend. And then we talked about all those different things that we say to ourselves. They create more stress and what we can do about them. So I'm going to end there and see how Sarah would like to proceed from now.
Great. Thank you so much, Debbie. I know that HFA also asked us to share the sponsorship slide, so I thought I would include this here for a few minutes just about some of the different sponsors who help support the programs that HFA has, including this webinar tonight. So I want to go ahead and share. We've received a couple questions through the chat that I thought that I would share with you, Debbie. And I have to say, what a fabulous presentation. I really appreciate all of the examples that you've given. I'm not sure about others here, but they certainly are resonating with me. A lot of the points that you're saying, I'm thinking like, gosh, I should really integrate that into my routine. So I appreciate it. So someone asked the question, I think a really, really good question. What if you take away your own happiness? How do you get that back?
Once I was in a grocery store and I saw a book that said, if somebody's driving you crazy, take back the keys. And you know, that involved a very involved question, but the fact that you're asking it means something, that you're aware that in some, wherever time, that place and time, has happened where you felt like you gave someone that power over you for your own happiness. Realizing that you're already light years ahead of a lot of people. What to do next, it depends on so many different things. But that will, that desire for you to have it back, that's a good sign. That means that you value yourself, you care about yourself, and you know that life could be better if you felt like you can get control over the situation. A lot of that has, it could be so many different reasons why you felt as if that somebody has control over your feelings about yourself. Sometimes people get into relationships that are not the best ones for them, or they're repeating patterns of the past. Sometimes people don't feel as if they deserve to be happy for all different reasons. Many times those messages come from somebody in your life in the past that did not have your best interest involved. And so really what I would suggest for you, because you know yourself the best, is to actually write that question on a piece of paper and figure out what you would like to do with it at this point in time, as opposed to trying to figure out, why you gave the power, how you gave the power. What would you like to do today to help you feel like you have that sense of the power of your own happiness? I can also recommend books. And sometimes we just need to talk to somebody else too, who cares about us, who has an impartial opinion of ourselves to work through those things. But again, I feel so hopeful that you have that question and you have a desire to get rid of whatever it is that's staying in the way of your best life.
That's great. Thank you, Debbie. That was great guidance. I want to share a couple other questions that we just had come in. So somebody asks, any advice for kids who are missing major milestones this year? So things like 8th graders, 12th graders, people might be graduating, kids who are looking forward to doing their big stick at camp,
Yes.
Ways in which that we might be able to support them.
Definitely. So in fact, I got the very same question on the last webinar I did. And one of the things is that helping get into the minds of an adolescent, in that they're especially about their sense of time, that there really isn't a future. They have a difficult time to see beyond whatever it is that's getting in their way. And so by giving them hope that this will have a beginning, a middle, and an end is one thing, but also realizing that they don't see it that way. They're involved in their emotions about a situation like prom. And so helping them to, number one, validate their feelings about that does actually, it sucks and it's hard to deal with. Validating their feelings about it and hopefully asking them, how do you think we could celebrate this in the future? Or what does it look like to celebrate this in the future? Really just validating someone's feelings, that goes a long way. And giving them hope that this will end, and then help them to make plans about maybe this is gone, but what else can we do to replace it? That's probably the best answer about that.
That's great. I appreciate that. So another question that we had come in is, what are ways in which you could help somebody who's feeling grumpy or down all the time, especially those who we love and, maybe are going through kind of a tough time? What are ways in which you might recommend we support them? I can say, especially given that so many of us are with our loved ones all the time.
So that's what I'm actively working on with my own husband here in Houston in the quarantine situation. Because what actually happens when somebody is grumpy or short-tempered is that it's kind of like they're stepping on your oxygen. I mean, it's affecting you. And so many times our natural response is to let them know we don't appreciate it, or you're doing the best you can, or something from a defensive mode. But to use that same compassion and give it and lend it toward the person that's actually feeling negative all the time, or feeling pessimistic or short-tempered about saying things like, I can see that you're really having a hard time with this. I totally understand that. I know we're all doing the best that we can. And it's just more of like just validating their existence, but not stepping into it, not losing yourself into their grumpiness, not losing yourself into allowing you to feel bad about yourself or your day. So really it's more like validating their experience and taking breaks from them too. That will help them. It's at the whole control fallacy. How much control do you actually have over that particular person's perception of their day or this pandemic? It's actually very little. All you can really do is support them and let them know that you're there for them. And then what you need to do is protect yourself so you don't go the same path, go into whatever their perception of things are. So it's really just about validating them, letting them know that you're there for them. And maybe you can even let them know that you wish for them. I wish you didn't feel so bad, or I wish you weren't so short-tempered. You can talk about that, but it's really, really important then to make sure they're not affecting your mental health.
That's great. I appreciate that. That's advice I will probably take on myself as we learn to all live together in a small space. So I wanted to share one final question that came in. Somebody asked, that they're experiencing mood swings right now, feeling sometimes optimistic, other times anxious, sad. Is there a coping mechanism that you might recommend? I'm sure many of us, this resonates because, it's hard to know kind of what's happening next with all of this. So, anything to kind of find, some sort of balance in the midst of many different feelings simultaneously.
No, exactly. Because you can really feel like on one day, like one person, and on another day, completely different. Many times what happens is, let's say on that day that we're just feeling pessimistic, we're scared to death, we don't think we can handle it. What happens is when we have a feeling, we label it, and then we actually begin to feel it, as opposed to really having a terrible time with this today, and it just is. There's no label with it. You're just validating that this is really what you're thinking, and it's okay to think that way, as opposed to, and I really need to change my point of view, or what's wrong with me. Instead of going to that rabbit hole, just acknowledging your own feelings about, I'm not really having a hard time today, and that's okay. And if you're feeling like you're schizophrenic because of one day you feel one way and one day you feel another way, again, having multiple thoughts about the same situation is completely normal, and it's okay, whatever you're feeling, but not labeling it, so you don't have to actually feel it. It just is the expression that I use when I'm going through a particular hard time, and as opposed to catastrophizing it, just accepting it for what it is. That's my best advice about that.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. I see there's some really nice feedback happening in the chat, including some resources that people are sharing. I want to share one that I saw just came in just because I'm sure it's relevant for a lot of people who are either tuning in tonight or who will see the recording. Someone recommends a podcast called A Mom's Retreat by Lynn Lyons, who's a licensed social worker. They said episode 2 is a bit about big milestones being missed and how to manage feelings for that. So again, I just want to share that, one of the things that I really appreciate about using this Zoom platform, which is a little different for us for these webinars, is that we're able to have some really good dialogue in addition to what's happening through our live feed as well. So I just want to thank everyone for sharing some of those resources and being willing to let the group know. So Debbie, those are all the questions that I've had so far, but I want to once again point people's attention to your information that you very kindly shared on the slide here. This has been such a wonderful presentation, and I should say a few people have written in just to say how much they appreciate how calm you are, your presence, your voice. I feel the same way. I feel like maybe you should just start doing meditations that we can do of you speaking. I don't know, maybe read a children's book or something, and I'll read that to my son, and we'll all feel calm. I don't, but it's really been a spectacular presentation. Lots of really good feedback. So, on behalf of VHI, I just want to thank you so much for making the time to join us tonight for this. And I'm sure that you'll hear Debbie's voice more as we continue to navigate these times. I do just want to point people's attention to what our next webinar will be for next Wednesday. We have our speaker actually from our second webinar that we did, Professor Joe from McGill University is going to be coming back to do a session called Humor, Magic, and Medicine. So he shared the description with us, which I have to read because it's fun. He says, this webinar will be looking at the strong interrelationship between the body and the mind and potential therapeutic value of humor and play. He says, come laugh a little and learn about the value of humor in managing stress. And according to Joe, you may even experience a little magic along the way. So for those of you who were able to tune into Joe's webinar, Sense, Nonsense, and Science, a few weeks ago, he's a pretty dynamic speaker and he usually has a robust slideshow. So anyways, feel free to join us for that. We've got the registration. If it's not up already, it should be up shortly on the NEHA website. So once again, Debbie, thank you so much for doing this with us tonight. We've certainly appreciated it. For anyone who wasn't able to join us for the full broadcast or for any part tonight, no worries. We'll have a recording of it available shortly on the website. I'll also send out an email to folks who were able to join us tonight, requesting some feedback for you all, which helps us to determine, is this the right platform for us to use moving forward, kind of best ways for us to continue navigating our Webinar Wednesday series. So thank you. I hope everyone has a wonderful evening, and we'll look forward to hopefully seeing you on a future webinar. So good night, everyone. Thanks again, Debbie.
My pleasure. Thank you for everything you do. Good night.
Oh, thank you. Good night.